On a glittering afternoon by the San Diego Marina, CEO Serena Whitmore, wrapped in a red designer dress, mocked the janitor who dared to touch her luxury yacht's engine. "Make this yacht run, and I'll kiss you at the dock." She laughed before her entire crew. Everyone expected him to fail. But when Henry Carter, the quiet janitor with grease-stained hands and haunted eyes, reached into the corroded engine room, what he uncovered wasn't just a broken machine, but her late father's secret. What if the man she mocked held the key to the one thing money could never fix her father's last wish? The sun hung high over the San Diego harbor that morning, casting diamonds across the surface of the Pacific. Yachts lined the marina like white monuments to wealth, their hulls gleaming against the salt blue sky. Among them sat the crown jewel of Whitmore Marine Group, the Silver Phoenix, a 120-foot luxury yacht that had taken 3 years and $12 million to build. It was supposed to be perfect. It was supposed to launch in 7 days. Instead, it sat silent and stubborn at the dock, refusing to start. Serena Whitmore stood at the helm, arms crossed, red stilettos clicking against the polished deck. At 34, she was everything the business magazine said she was. Blonde, beautiful, ruthless. She wore crimson like armor, always red, always sharp. Since inheriting Whitmore Marine Group from her late father Richard 2 years ago, she'd doubled profits and tripled the company's media presence. But now, 1 week before the Legacy Voyage event designed to honor her father's memory, his masterpiece yacht wouldn't move. 3 mechanics had failed. 2 engineers had quit. The board was getting nervous, and worse, the press was starting to ask questions. Serena could feel control slipping through her manicured fingers like sand. She hated that feeling more than anything in the world. Down below, past the executive offices and the champagne-stocked lounges, Henry Carter pushed a mop across the dock. He was 36, but looked older in the way men do when they've lived too many lives in too few years. Tall and broad-shouldered, with sun-darkened skin and short brown hair, he moved with the quiet economy of someone who'd learned to take up less space than he deserved. His son Eli, 8 years old with bright, curious eyes, sat nearby doing homework on an overturned crate, occasionally glancing up to watch his father work. Henry had been a janitor at Whitmore Marina for 11 months. Before that, he'd been a lot of things he didn't talk about. Navy engineer, weapons specialist, the man who'd designed prototype propulsion systems that never saw daylight, the man who'd taken the fall when a classified mission went sideways, who'd had his name erased from every patent and every record. He'd left that life behind the day his wife died, 3 years ago, when cancer took her before her 32nd birthday. Her last wish had been simple: raise Eli somewhere the wind smells like salt. So here he was, mopping decks and emptying trash. Close to the ocean, close to anonymity, close to peace. He didn't mind the work. Honest labor had a rhythm to it, a meditation. But he couldn't help noticing things, like the particular grinding sound coming from the Silver Phoenix's engine bay, like the way the mechanics kept checking the fuel lines when the problem was clearly electrical, like the way Serena Whitmore's perfect facade cracked a little more each day. Serena descended the gangway that afternoon like a storm in red silk, her assistant Vivian Clark scrambling behind her with a tablet and a worried expression. Vivian was thin, sharp-featured, ambitious, the kind of woman who measured loyalty by salary and opportunity. "Another $10,000 wasted," Serena snapped, her voice carrying across the dock. These so-called experts couldn't start a lawnmower. She caught sight of Henry cleaning near the yacht's stern and stopped. Something in his stillness irritated her. He always seemed to be watching, thinking, as if he knew something everyone else didn't. "You," she called out. "How long have you been standing there?" Henry looked up, unhurried. "Just working, ma'am. You seem to watch a lot for someone who just mops floors." The dock crew snickered. Henry set down his mop, wiped his hands on his work pants, and met her eyes with an evenness that surprised her. "Sometimes," he said quietly. The man holding the mop used to hold a wrench. The crew's laughter stopped. Serena felt something shift, a challenge she hadn't expected. She stepped closer, heels clicking like a countdown. "Is that right?" Her smile was razor thin. "You think you can fix what 3 mechanics couldn't?" I didn't say that, but you're thinking it. Henry glanced at the yacht, then back at her. I'm thinking someone should listen to what it's trying to say. Serena laughed, but there was an edge to it. The pressure of the past week, the looming event, the fear that she wasn't enough to carry her father's legacy, it all condensed into this moment. She wanted to humiliate this man the way failure was humiliating her. Fine, she said loudly, making sure everyone could hear. Make this yacht run, and I'll kiss you at the dock. The crew erupted. Whistles, laughter, disbelief. Vivian's eyes widened. Serena felt a rush of power, the familiar sensation of controlling a room. She expected him to back down, to realize his place, to apologize for speaking out of turn. Henry didn't. He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded once. All right, he said simply. I'll need access to the engine room. Serena's smile froze. She hadn't expected acceptance. She'd expected cowardice. Around them, the crew was already pulling out phones, some recording, others texting. By nightfall, the story would spread. The CEO, who bet a kiss on an impossible fix. Behind a maintenance shed, Eli Carter had watched the entire exchange. His small face was serious, worried. But when Henry glanced back at him, he gave his father a thumbs up. Eli had learned early that his dad was different from other adults. Quieter, sadder sometimes, but never a liar. If his dad said he'd fix something, he'd fix it. That evening, Henry descended into the Silver Phoenix's engine room with a toolbox that had seen better years and a flashlight that flickered. The space was cramped, hot, smelling of oil and salt corrosion. The engine itself was a masterpiece of engineering, a hybrid electric-diesel system designed for both power and efficiency. It should have purred like a dream. Instead, it sat silent and cold. Henry placed his palm against the metal housing and closed his eyes. Years ago, he'd learned to listen to machines the way some people listen to music. Every engine had a voice, a personality. This one felt familiar in a way that made his chest tighten. He pulled out the maintenance log and began tracing circuits, checking connections, testing relays. 2 hours in, he found it. A corroded junction box, buried deep in the bilge, its contacts eaten away by salt water. But it wasn't just corrosion. The box itself was stamped with a serial number he recognized. A prototype series from 9 years ago. A design he'd created himself when he was still at the Naval Research Laboratory. Henry sat back on his heels, breathing hard. This engine wasn't just similar to his old work. It was built on his original blueprints, the ones he developed for a next-generation naval propulsion system, the ones that had been classified, then mysteriously declassified, and sold to private industry, the ones with his name stripped from every patent. Whitmore Industries had bought those designs. Richard Whitmore had turned Henry's military innovation into a civilian luxury product. And somehow, nobody remembered that Henry Carter had drawn the first lines. He pulled out his phone and searched the engine's model number. The patents all listed Richard Whitmore as primary inventor, with no mention of prior work. Anger flickered in Henry's chest, but it was old anger, tired anger. Richard Whitmore had been a visionary, yes, but also a man who knew how to navigate the gray spaces between military contracts and corporate profits. The question was, did Serena know? Did she have any idea that her father had built an empire partly on stolen designs? Henry looked at the corroded junction box again. He could fix this. He knew exactly what needed replacing, exactly how to reroute the power flow. But doing so meant revealing his expertise, opening doors he'd carefully closed. It meant Serena Whitmore would start asking questions he wasn't ready to answer. From above, he heard footsteps. Serena's voice drifted down through the access hatch. Still trying to save face? Janitor? Henry didn't respond. He returned to work, his hands steady, even as his mind raced. Whatever happened next, he needed to finish what he'd started. Not for her promise, not for pride, but because this engine, in some strange way, was his child too, and he'd never been the kind of man to abandon his responsibilities. The next morning, Serena found herself doing something she'd never done before. caring what the janitor thought. She arrived at the marina early, before the crew, and stood on the dock watching the Silver Phoenix. From inside, she could hear the soft clang of tools, the methodical sound of someone who knew exactly what they were doing. She climbed aboard and descended to the engine room. Henry was there, shirtless in the heat, muscles slick with sweat, utterly focused on a tangle of wiring. For a moment, she just watched him. There was a grace to his movements, a precision that reminded her of her father in his workshop, back when she was young, and he still had time to teach her things. "You're back early," Henry said without looking up. "It's my yacht." "Yes, ma'am." "Stop calling me that. It makes me feel old." "What should I call you?" "Serena works fine." He glanced at her then, something unreadable in his dark eyes. "Serena," he repeated, testing the name. "Did your father ever work on engines himself?" The question caught her off guard. "When I was little." "Why?" "This design has his fingerprints all over it. The way the cooling system integrates with the electrical grid. It's elegant, unconventional." Serena felt something warm move through her chest. He was brilliant. Everyone said so. He was, Henry agreed quietly. Then, so softly she almost missed it, but he didn't work alone. "What do you mean?" Henry set down his wrench and wiped his hands. "Every good design is built on shoulders. Your father was smart enough to recognize good ideas when he saw them." Serena frowned, trying to decode his meaning, but before she could press further, Vivian's voice called down from the deck. "Serena! Board meeting in an hour. You need to prep." The spell broke. Serena's walls went back up. She gave Henry a curt nod and left, but the conversation lingered in her mind all through the tedious board meeting, all through lunch with investors, all through the afternoon of crisis management and damage control. By evening, she couldn't stand it anymore. She returned to the marina and found Henry still working, now with Eli sitting nearby, doing homework by the light of a camping lantern. "Don't you ever go home?" Serena asked. "This is close enough," Henry replied. She noticed the boy then, really noticed him. He had Henry's eyes, serious and deep. There was a small photo tucked into his math book, a woman with kind eyes and a bright smile. Eli caught her looking and quickly covered it. "That's my mom," he said defensively. "She's in heaven." Serena felt something crack inside her chest. "I'm sorry." "She said heaven has boats," Eli continued. "Dad says that's why we live near the water, so we can wave to her when the boats pass." Henry's hands stilled on his work. Serena saw the grief flash across his face, quickly masked. She understood then that this man carried weight she couldn't see, that his quietness wasn't weakness but survival. "Your son is very smart," she said softly. "Takes after his mother." A long silence stretched between them, filled only by the lap of water against hulls and the distant cry of gulls. Serena sat down on an overturned bucket, suddenly exhausted. The yacht, the company, the expectations, all of it felt crushing. "I'm scared," she admitted, surprising herself. "The legacy voyage is in 5 days. If this yacht doesn't run, I've failed him, failed my father." Henry looked at her, really looked at her, and she felt seen in a way she hadn't in years. "Your father," Henry said carefully, "would want you to know the truth." "What truth?" But before he could answer, a crack of thunder split the sky. The clouds that had been gathering all afternoon finally opened, releasing a torrential downpour. Eli yelped and grabbed his homework. Henry immediately moved to cover the open electrical panels. "You should go," he told Serena. "What about you? I can't leave it like this. Water in the wrong place will ruin everything." Rain drummed against the yacht's hull like 1,000 urgent fingers. Lightning flashed, illuminating Henry's determined face. Serena stood, torn between leaving and something she couldn't name. "Go," Henry repeated, more firmly. "I'll finish tonight." "You're insane." "Probably." She started to leave, then stopped at the gangway. "Henry, thank you for trying." He met her eyes through the rain. "I'm not trying, Serena. I'm succeeding." The storm raged through the night. Henry worked in darkness punctuated by lightning, his hands moving by memory and feel. The junction box was replaced. the wiring rerouted, the corroded connections cleaned and sealed. Every repair brought back memories of the original design process, of late nights in the naval lab, of the pride he'd felt creating something that could change maritime propulsion forever. That pride had curdled into betrayal when he discovered his work had been appropriated, when the mission he'd been protecting had been used as cover to erase his contributions. He'd taken the fall silently, protecting his team, accepting the dishonorable discharge that wasn't quite dishonorable enough to prevent civilian employment, but damaging enough to ensure nobody in the defense industry would touch him. Richard Whitmore had been part of that appropriation, Henry knew. As a military contractor, Richard had been present during the final review. He'd seen the designs, recognized their commercial potential, and used his connections to acquire them after Henry's fall from grace. But as Henry worked through the storm, he realized something. Anger was exhausting. Holding grudges was exhausting. His wife had taught him that in her final months, when cancer had stolen her energy but not her wisdom. She'd made him promise to let go of bitterness, to focus on Eli, to find peace in small things. Maybe this was his small thing, fixing what was broken, proving to himself that his work still mattered, even if his name didn't appear on the patents. At 2 a.m, with rain still hammering the deck above, Henry connected the final wire. His hands were shaking with exhaustion. He took a deep breath, said a small prayer to whatever God might be listening, and reached for the ignition sequence. The engine turned over once, twice, then roared to life with a sound like thunder, answering thunder. The vibration traveled through the hull, smooth and powerful, exactly as he'd designed it to be years ago. Henry closed his eyes, overwhelmed by a joy he hadn't felt in years. On the dock, illuminated by lightning, Serena Whitmore stood soaked to the bone in her red dress, having come back because she couldn't stay away. She'd watched through the rain as light suddenly flooded the engine room, heard the unmistakable sound of success. The crew began arriving, drawn by noise and curiosity. They emerged from their quarters and cars, gathering in the rain, disbelieving. The Silver Phoenix, silent for weeks, now hummed with perfect life. Henry climbed out of the engine room, exhausted, covered in grease and water, and found Serena waiting at the top of the stairs. Her makeup was ruined, her dress clinging to her like a second skin, but she'd never looked more real to him. "How?" she whispered. Henry pulled a folded paper from his pocket, the original blueprint, annotated in 2 different handwritings. One elegant and precise, Richard Whitmore's. The other rougher, faster, filled with equations and corrections, Henry's own, from 9 years ago. "Your father didn't build this engine alone," Henry said quietly. "And he knew it. I found this tucked behind the main panel, sealed in plastic. He left it there, deliberately." Serena took the blueprint with trembling hands. Even in the dim light, she could see it. Her father's handwriting mixed with another's. The dates placed the collaborative work years before her father's public unveiling of the design. "I don't understand," she breathed. "Your father was on a military advisory board," Henry explained. "He saw my prototype work. He recognized its potential. When circumstances removed me from the project, he acquired the designs. Legally, technically, but not ethically," Serena finished. She looked at Henry with new eyes, seeing not a janitor but the ghost of her father's past. "That's why you knew how to fix it. You created it. I created the foundation. Your father built the empire." Lightning flashed again, illuminating both their faces. The crew crowded closer, phones out, witnessing everything. Serena became aware of how this must look. The CEO soaked and vulnerable, the janitor holding proof of industrial appropriation, the yacht running despite all expert predictions. In that moment, she had a choice. She could dismiss him, threaten him, use her lawyers and power to bury this truth like her father had. Or she could do something her father never did. "I'm sorry," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I'm sorry for how I treated you. I'm sorry for what my father did. And I'm sorry I didn't see you for who you are." The dock fell silent except for the drum of rain and the purr of the engine. Henry looked at her, surprised by her honesty, moved by her willingness to be wrong in front of witnesses. You made it run, Serena continued, her voice stronger now. Against all odds. Against every expert. You made it run. You kept your end of the bargain. She stepped forward, water streaming down her face, and did something that shocked everyone, including herself. She kept her promise. She kissed him. It wasn't the mocking kiss she'd imagined when she'd made the bet. It was apology and recognition, and something else entirely. The strange electricity of two people, seeing each other clearly for the first time. The crew erupted in cheers and hollers, phones capturing every moment, but Henry and Serena were somewhere else, somewhere private despite the crowd. When they finally broke apart, Serena was crying. "Show me," she whispered. "Show me everything. I want to know the truth." The next 3 days were a whirlwind. Serena and Henry went through her father's archives together, finding more evidence of the original collaboration. Richard Whitmore had kept meticulous records, including a final note written shortly before his death. "If the engine stops, find Carter. He'll know why. He always knew why. I should have told the truth years ago. Make it right, Serena." Her father had known. In his final months, battling the heart disease that would kill him, Richard Whitmore had recognized his moral debt. He'd left instructions for Serena to find, hoping she'd have the courage he'd lacked. Serena wept, reading those words. Her father, the man she'd idolized, had built his success partly on stolen work. But he'd also tried, at the end, to set things right. It was messy and imperfect, like all human things. As word spread about the yacht's miraculous repair, the story took on a life of its own. The video of the kiss went viral, not as mockery but as something unexpectedly moving. A powerful woman keeping her word. A hidden genius vindicated. A moment of raw honesty in a world of careful performance. But not everyone was pleased. The board of directors, already nervous about Serena's leadership, saw scandal. Vivian Clark, ambitious and calculating, saw opportunity. She began leaking selected documents to business press, framing Serena as either ignorant of her father's theft or complicit in covering it up. Stock prices wobbled. Investors made worried calls. Then came the sabotage. 2 nights before the legacy voyage, someone tampered with the Silver Phoenix's fuel system. It was subtle, professional. A small adjustment that would cause a catastrophic fire once the yacht was at sea, far from help. The kind of sabotage designed to look like an accident, to destroy the yacht and Serena's reputation in one terrible stroke. Vivian had hired a disgruntled former engineer, paid him $30,000 in cash, and provided access codes. She'd convinced herself she was saving the company from Serena's weakness, positioning herself as the strong leader who'd step in after the inevitable disaster. Henry discovered the tampering during a routine pre-launch check. His hands froze on the modified valve, recognizing instantly what someone had done. Fuel would leak into the engine room during operation. Vapors would accumulate, and then a single spark would turn the Silver Phoenix into an inferno. He found Serena in her office, working late. Stress evident in every line of her body. "We have a problem," he said quietly. 20 minutes later, they stood together in the engine room, staring at the evidence of sabotage. Serena's face had gone pale. "Who would do this?" she whispered. "Someone who benefits from your failure." "Vivian." The name came out flat, certain. Serena had seen her assistant's increasing coldness. The private calls, the way she'd been positioning herself with board members. "She wants my job. What do you want to do?" Serena looked at the modified fuel line, then at Henry. "Can you fix it?" "Yes, but it'll take time. We'd have to cancel the launch, push it back." "No." Her voice was steel. "My father's name is already being dragged through mud. If we cancel now, it looks like we're hiding something worse. We fix it tonight, we launch tomorrow, and we prove that neither sabotage nor scandal can sink this ship." Henry saw the fire in her eyes and recognized someone who'd finally found their courage. "All right," he said. "But I'm staying aboard during the launch. If anything goes wrong, I need to be close to the engine." "That's dangerous," More dangerous than letting you sail alone? They worked through the night, side by side, repairing the sabotage and reinforcing every system. Eli slept on a cot nearby, occasionally waking to watch his father work. Near dawn, as Henry finished the final connections, Eli said sleepily, "Dad, is Serena going to be my new mom?" Henry froze. Serena, who just returned with coffee, stopped in the doorway. "Eli," Henry said carefully. "That's not we haven't. It's okay." Eli yawned. "I asked Mom if it was okay for you to be happy again. She said yes in a dream." Henry's eyes went bright with unshed tears. Serena set down the coffee and sat beside the boy, her heart breaking and mending simultaneously. "Your mom was very smart," she told Eli gently. "And she was right. Your dad deserves to be happy. You too." Eli said seriously, "You smile more now." "It's nice." The launch day arrived with perfect weather, clear skies, calm seas, a gentle wind that smelled of salt and possibility. The marina filled with press, investors, local politicians, and hundreds of spectators. The Silver Phoenix gleamed at the dock, every inch of her polished to perfection. Serena stood at the helm in white this time, not red. White for new beginnings. White for truth. Henry was below, monitoring systems, ready for anything. The board members and executives filled the deck, champagne in hand, cameras rolling. Vivian Clark stood at the stern, wearing an expression of barely concealed anticipation. She'd leaked additional documents that morning to a major business publication, timed to drop just as the yacht would be too far from shore to turn back quickly. She'd calculated everything perfectly. The sabotage would cause a fire, Serena would be blamed for recklessness, and the board would have no choice but to remove her. Vivian would step in as interim CEO, having positioned herself as the voice of caution who'd been ignored. What Vivian hadn't calculated was Henry's competence, or Serena's courage, or the fact that her sabotage had been completely undone. The engines roared to life, powerful and clean. The Silver Phoenix pulled away from the dock, cutting through the harbor water like a knife through silk. On board, guests exclaimed at the smoothness, the quiet power, the way the yacht seemed to anticipate the water's rhythm. 30 minutes into the voyage, as they rounded Point Loma and headed into open ocean, smoke began rising from the engine room. Not from sabotage from a backup fuel pump that Vivian's engineer had also compromised, a failsafe Henry hadn't thought to check. Alarms screamed. Guests panicked. Vivian's smile began forming. This was it, the disaster she'd orchestrated. But Henry was already moving. He grabbed a fire extinguisher and descended into smoke, shouting for everyone to stay back. The backup pump was feeding fuel directly onto a heating element, creating smoke and flame, but not yet the explosion it was designed to cause. Serena ran to the engine room entrance, screaming his name. She could see flames through the smoke, could hear Henry working frantically. Every instinct told her to go down, to help. But she knew she'd only be in the way. "Close the emergency vents." Henry's voice came through the smoke. "Cut oxygen to the room." Serena ran to the control panel, her hands shaking, and activated the emergency protocol. Vents sealed. The fire's roar diminished, starved of air. But Henry was still down there, trapped in a sealed room with failing oxygen. 2 minutes. That was how long he had before the air would run out. Serena counted every second, her heart hammering, remembering his son sleeping peacefully back at the marina under the care of a crew member, innocent and trusting that his father would come home. At 90 seconds, the engine room door burst open. Henry stumbled out, face covered in soot, coughing violently, but alive. Alive and holding the modified fuel pump evidence of the sabotage. The fire was out. The yacht's primary systems were intact. The emergency had been contained. But everyone had seen the smoke, the panic, the near disaster. Cameras had caught it all. Vivian's face had gone gray. This wasn't how it was supposed to happen. Henry was supposed to die. The yacht was supposed to burn. Serena was supposed to be ruined. Instead, Serena stood at the helm and made an announcement that would change everything. "Ladies and gentlemen, you've just witnessed an attempted murder. Someone sabotaged this yacht. Someone wanted us to burn at sea, But you also witnessed something else. The skill and courage of a man whose work made this vessel possible in the first place. She gestured to Henry, soot-covered and exhausted. This is Henry Carter. 9 years ago, he designed the propulsion system that powers the Silver Phoenix. His name was removed from the patents through circumstances I'm still learning about. My father acquired his work, built our company's flagship designs on his innovations, and never gave him credit. The deck went silent. Cameras swiveled from Serena to Henry and back. I'm not proud of this truth, Serena continued, her voice strong. But I won't hide it. My father made mistakes. So have I. The difference is, I'm going to make it right. Effective immediately, Whitmore Marine Group will become Whitmore Carter Innovations. Henry Carter will be recognized as co-creator of all designs derived from his original work, with full compensation and patent restoration. And whoever sabotaged this yacht will face criminal prosecution. She turned to Vivian. You're fired. Security will be waiting at the dock. Vivian's face crumpled. She'd gambled everything and lost. As security personnel moved to escort her inside, she began crying, insisting she'd only wanted to save the company, that Serena was weak, that a woman who fell in love with a janitor couldn't lead. That's where you're wrong, Serena said quietly. I didn't fall in love with a janitor. I fell in love with a man brilliant enough to build engines that changed the world, humble enough to push a mop without complaint, and brave enough to run into fire to save people who never gave him a chance. I fell in love with someone who makes me want to be better. That's not weakness. That's the only strength that matters. The yacht sailed on, past the crisis, past the sabotage, into clear water and clear skies. Guests who'd come expecting a corporate spectacle got something more honest. Human failure and human redemption, courage under fire. Love discovered in unlikely places. When the Silver Phoenix finally docked that evening, the sun was setting in shades of orange and gold. The press waited. The board waited. The world waited. But before Serena disembarked to face them all, she found Henry at the stern, looking out at the water. You saved us, she said simply. I saved the engine. You saved yourself. She stood beside him, shoulder to shoulder, and realized she'd spent years trying to fill her father's shoes when she should have been making her own footprints. I meant what I said, she told him. Whitmore Carter Innovations. Full partnership. Equal recognition. Serena, no arguments. It's the right thing. It's what my father wanted at the end. What he was too afraid to do while he lived. I won't make his mistakes. Henry was quiet for a long moment. Then, Eli calls you almost Mom, when he thinks I can't hear. Serena's breath caught. Is that okay? He asked his mother's permission in a dream. Apparently, she approved. They both smiled through sudden tears. Below them, on the dock, Eli waited with the crew member who'd watched him, bouncing excitedly when he saw his father safe. When he saw Serena beside him, his smile grew even wider. The press conference that followed was unlike anything the business world had seen. Serena didn't spin or deflect. She told the truth about her father's appropriation of Henry's designs, about her own ignorance, about the sabotage and the cover-up attempt. She announced the company's restructuring, Henry's recognition, and a new initiative to audit all patents for proper attribution. The board, facing the choice between backing her transparency or appearing complicit in cover-up, chose to support her. Investors, moved by the story of redemption and innovation, held steady. The viral video of her kissing Henry at the dock had already reframed the narrative. This wasn't scandal. It was justice delayed but finally served. Henry stood beside her throughout, uncomfortable with attention but steady in his support. When reporters asked how it felt to go from janitor to co-owner overnight, he said simply, I've been the same person the whole time. The only thing that changed is who's paying attention. 3 months later, on a Saturday morning at the same San Diego marina, a different scene unfolded. No press. No board members. Just family. Serena wore white linen instead of red silk. Henry wore jeans and a clean shirt, his hands free of grease for once. Eli raced up and down the dock, playing with kids from the marina community, his laughter carrying on the wind. The Silver Phoenix sat at anchor, but today they'd take out a smaller yacht, one Serena and Henry had restored together over the past months, working side by side, teaching each other their different kinds of knowledge. She'd learned about engines. He'd learned about business. Both had learned about partnership. "You ready?" Henry asked, offering his hand to help her aboard. Serena took it, feeling the calluses, the strength, the gentleness. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere the wind smells like salt," he said, smiling. "Someone once told me that's where peace lives." They sailed into the morning sun, Eli at the wheel under Henry's careful supervision, Serena beside them both. The yacht moved smoothly, every system working in harmony, a machine built on truth and repaired with love. On the dock behind them, a small memorial plaque had been installed that morning. It read, "In memory of Richard Whitmore and Sarah Carter, may those who come after learn to do better." Below it, a quote, "The engine runs on fuel, but the heart runs on truth." Serena watched the marina shrink behind them and felt something she hadn't felt since her father died. Peace. Not the fragile peace of control and perfection, but the deeper peace of honesty and acceptance. She'd failed. She'd learned. She'd grown. She'd found love in the last place she'd thought to look. Henry steered the yacht around the harbor mouth and into open water. Eli cheered as they hit the first rolling swell. Serena laughed, the sound bright and free. "You know," she said to Henry, "you promised to make the yacht run. You never said anything about making me feel like I could fly." He looked at her, this woman who'd mocked him and learned from him and loved him, and knew that some engines, the ones that mattered most, couldn't be measured in horsepower or efficiency. They could only be measured in the smiles of people who'd found their way home. "Funny thing about promises," Henry said, pulling her close as Eli danced at the helm. "The best ones are the ones you don't even know you're making." The yacht sailed on into afternoon light, carrying 3 people who'd learned that strength isn't about being perfect or powerful. It's about being honest enough to admit when you're wrong, brave enough to fix what's broken, and open enough to love when you least expect it. Behind them, the marina glittered like scattered diamonds. Ahead, the Pacific stretched blue and endless and full of possibility. And somewhere between shore and horizon, in the space where wind meets water and truth meets courage, a family was born not from blood or law, but from choice and second chances, and the understanding that every person, no matter where they start, deserves to be seen for who they truly are. The engine hummed, the wind sang, the yacht ran perfect and true. And at the dock, someday, there would be another kiss, but this time given freely, with no bet, no mockery, only gratitude for the journey that brought them all home.